Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov Chess Channel and welcome back to the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour Charity Cup Finals in 2022. So we're now already in the second day of the super final, and yesterday Magnus Carlsen destroyed really young Krzysztof Duda in the day one. Magnus Carlsen had 2 wins and only 1 draw, so it was simply time now for young Krzysztof Duda to make something happen. We're now already in the game 1 of the second day of the super final, and it was already a clash, really a beautiful attacking game played by both sides. In my opinion, really one of the best games so far from this super event. So let's check out now what happened. It was, as I said, simply time for young Krzysztof Duda to make something to happen against the world champion Magnus Carlsen. So we had here e4 by Duda, c5 by Magnus, the Sicilian, knight to f3, knight to c6, and after bishop to b5 we have the Rosolimo Nezhmedinov attack. The idea is clear. We want to create really this weakened pawn structure. It's a positional idea. Then of course after black has so many weaknesses in the position, maybe double pawns, also the c5 could be a long-term weakness. So Magnus goes g6, and this line he has played many times against Fabiano Caruana in their world championship match in 2018. Perfectly fine. If you want to take now, then we can still take, and then after bishop to g7 and e5 we could control, I think, further the center. Especially white could have problems around the square d4 in this scenario. So d4 could be weakness, even if you try to prevent this idea with the move c3 to control the d4, then also the d2 is a little bit weak. So as I said, if you have problems maybe to study this line, check out some e5 lines, and I think you could have a comfortable game from black's perspective if a white wants to take immediately. So as I said, we're not studying too much theory today, but as I said, e5 would be a natural idea. So here after this g6 kingside castling was played by Duda, we have bishop to g7 and now c3. Going into similar ideas like in the Alpin variation, now the idea is clear. We want to have d4, bishop to e3, knight to d2, then still have a good control in the center, get also our pieces. Also so far normal ideas. We have knight to f6 attacking the pawn. Sorry about that. So after move knight to f6 here young Krzysztof Duda simply supports this pawn on e4, and now Magnus also castles kingside. We have d4 and now d5. This is really an important move that you have to play. If you don't play this move, if you play something like d6 passive, then you could here be broken with move e5, d5, our opportunities. So you're not battling for the center. That's the most important thing here to recognize. So that's why d5 is I think the main line. You have to break and enter here in the center. You cannot really tolerate this very powerful center of white. So we have here e5, and sorry, we're not going to answer that. So after move e5, what you should not do again is also to play in a passive way. You should not retreat here to d7 because then even some e6 ideas I think could work to break and enter here like this. So that's why here the main line is simply knight to e4. Here we have bishop to e3. The only way here that white could lose the tactical battle in the center is around the square d4. So you see we have some kind of a tension here already. So with the move queen to b6, Magnus could maybe attack the d4 further. So that's why bishop to e3 is also a popular way here of black. So we have c takes d4. Magnus undermines the pressure in the center. C takes d4, and after queen to b6 you see the battle is going on here around the square d4. Also notice that the bishop on b5 is hanging. So we have here bishop takes c6 by young Krzysztof Duda, and now queen to c6. Queen to c6 is much better because you don't want to take with the b pawn here the bishop on c6, because then after queen to c2 this is an backward pawn that I think could be attacked further in the near future. Also some ideas of knight to c3, knight to a4, and then knight to c5 are working maybe to maneuver the knight and then cement the position around the square c5. I would not love to play now this position with this backward pawn, although the engine gives here equal chances for both sides. But as I said, still I don't like to have these weaknesses immediately if you don't have to necessarily to have them. So as I said, after move bishop to c6, Magnus takes with the queen, and now the pawn structure is again symmetrical, which is perfectly fine for the knight, which is also perfectly fine for the bishop. So as I said, so far Magnus is continuing the game without weaknesses. So we have here knight from f to d2 attacking the knight on e4, and now bishop to e6 by Magnus Carlsen. And this is now a beautiful move, because if you take now knight takes e4 after d takes e4, you still have the opportunity to make something with the move bishop to d5. So you still have a good control. Now the bishop on e6 is becoming more and more a good piece here. So in the beginning of off this tactical sequence. Maybe the bishop is not such a good square, although it had some kind of activity, but it can be always kicked away with f3, g4. So this bishop on c8 is so far not good, but here Magnus found a really beautiful way with the move bishop to e6 how to improve this bishop pair. So here we have knight to b3, and young Krzysztof Duda plays, I think, solid chess here. He's targeting again the c5 square. He's trying also to get maybe this knight on d2, and then rook to c1, attacking the queen, moving the queen maybe from the first rank, connect the rook, then white could have, I think, a decent setup. So it doesn't matter, I think, in this position that white has lost the bishop pair, because in this symmetrical pawn structures, you see, we have really symmetry when we count pawns on the queen side, on the king side. It's not so important to have the bishop pair, because the knight can also find good squares in the position. So Magnus plays now f5, cements simply his knight further. We have now f3, and here after move f4, beautiful counter attack here by Magnus. Of course, if you take f takes e4, then the problems, I think, after f takes e3, you could maybe proceed with the move knight to c3, but now bishop to h6 is, I think, such an annoying move. You see, this pawn is really dangerous here, although it's an isolated pawn. But look at this, it's supported by the bishop, and I would not love to face anymore this pawn. I'm not sure how to stop it. I think it's something that bothers you through the whole game, although you don't have to necessarily attack it immediately, and you don't have to battle for it immediately. But it's so annoying, because also then the rook can come on f2, and when the rook comes on second rank, then of course you could get destroyed tactically. So that's why here after move f4, bishop to c1 by played by Duda, it seems like a passive move, but still Magnus has to, of course, also to retreat with the knight. So we have here a rook to d8, we have queen to e2, we have knight to g5, and now a beautiful move here by young Krzysztof Duda, h4. And most of us, of course, would play something like knight to f7, but this wouldn't be, I think, a good position anymore, because the pawn on f4 is hanging. We can still proceed with knight to c3, developing the knight still when the pawn is taking, then rook to c1, and as I said, this will be a perfect setup. And now Magnus pulls off basically what's the impossible move, but it's the only move that helps out white here, pardon me, black here. It's the move knight to e4. You have to play this move, and now after f takes e4, the pawns are rolling. Really, really beautiful tactical shot by Magnus. After d takes e4, here young Krzysztof Duda doesn't react correctly immediately. What he should have played is normal development, knight to c3, and you hope for the best. Probably white can survive this, because even if something like e3 happens, in one moment maybe we can sacrifice some material back, and we still have our powerful center. So as I said, maybe it's not so pleasant to play the game, but if you get challenged too much, maybe we just sacrifice the piece back and take some pawns and have a decent position. But after queen to e4, what Magnus should have done, he played the move bishop to d5, but what he should have done is really an immortal move f3. f3 would be really, really brilliant, because if you take now the queen to c6, then you have f2, and it comes with the fork, you move the king, and then we have a new promotion. So it's sort of an intermediate check that Magnus Carlsen unfortunately missed. Really, it would be a really beautiful move, but he played the move bishop to d5. And okay, still Magnus is here much better now, because of the fact that young Krzysztof Duda took the pawn, allowed now Magnus Carlsen to get into the game. We have queen to d3, f3. Now Magnus plays the move which he should have played earlier. It would really an immortal game by Magnus if he would have played the move f3 earlier, but as I said, still he found, of course, his tactic, and now white's king is really endangered, especially because of this long diagonal by the queen and the bishop, by also this rook activity, and the fact that this bishop can be also maybe in the near future included into the attack. Also, the rook battery on the f file could work, so already sort of a naked king position. Because the lack of development, we have to notice here, bishop on c1 passive, knight on b1, rook on a1 very passive. Meanwhile, although Magnus is so far down a piece, but his pieces are playing much more actively. So we have here bishop to e3, f takes g2, we have now knight to d2, and now queen to e6 here by Magnus. He's trying, of course, to get the queen more into the game. So we have now bishop to f2, which is now a new mistake here by young Krzysztof Duda. You have to play, I think, here bishop to g5, just securing the bishop for a while. But now after move bishop to f2, Magnus could have gone with the move rook to f2, and here after king to f2, queen to g4 is very dangerous already. Now with the support of the rook, by including the bishop into the game, this is already an unpleasant game. So this was also a beautiful tactical shot that Magnus Carlsen unfortunately missed, but still this position is so good for Magnus. Here he played rook to f3, which was sort of an idea to attack further the position, but after move knight to f3 should have been played here by young Krzysztof Duda. After queen to h3, that was Magnus Carlsen's idea to sneak in with the queen, but actually this position you can protect with the move bishop to g3. And now after queen to g3, you can prolong the game by playing knight from b to d2, and at least you have new defenders into the game. That was the only way here for young Krzysztof Duda to defend this position, which he unfortunately missed. As I said, this is rapid time chess. This is really brutal attacking chess by Magnus Carlsen. Unfortunately, here after move rook to f3, really brilliant tactical shots by Magnus Carlsen. Here we have queen to f3, now queen to f3, knight to f3, and after queen to h3, the position basically didn't change because still there is this threat of queen to h1. Really brutal tactics by the world champion Magnus Carlsen. So after knight to h2, we have bishop to h6, simply including now more attackers into the game. We have rook to e4. Here young Krzysztof Duda is preventing this, and now Magnus plays rook to f8. So he's including every piece into the attack. That's exactly what you should do when you're on the attacking side. All of the pieces have to play. You just cannot play with the queen and bishop when you have more pieces. Just include. Now again, the threat is something like rook to f2, then queen takes h2, and the game should be over. So here rook from a to e1. We have now this idea: rook to f2, king to f2, queen to h2 comes also now with a potential promotion here with the move g1. It's of course then a beautiful checkmate probably here. Here rook to g1. Young Krzysztof Duda blocks this idea, but now queen to h3. We have rook to e2, and now again this is a really beautiful idea how Magnus includes also the pawns into the attack, because okay, the bishop is perfectly fine, the queen is very active, but now even the pawns can play. Maybe then we can also try to search new activities for the queen. After move a5, we have here this idea: rook takes g2, but now after move a5, a4, the knight gets challenged. We have knight to d2, and now after queen to h4, a new check. We have king to f1. We have now queen takes d4, and again the king is a little bit paralyzed here. So again, the activity of black's pieces and the fact that the king is so naked causes now many position problems. This is also a weakness. The pawn is here weak. So as I said, even if we trade everything, for instance, if you could just imagine the position without the rooks, maybe without the knight, and without the queens, and without the bishop on the board, then still this is a winning endgame here for Magnus. As I said, really brutal stuff. So knight to f3, we have queen to d5 attacking the knight on f3, rook to f2, and now Magnus simply grabs another pawn, which is perfectly fine. He is now completely winning endgame here. And after move rook to c2 was played, we have queen to d5. Again, Magnus centralizes the queen. The problem is always for white can maybe play one check, two checks or something, but white cannot include more pieces into the attack. You just can maybe create one check with the rook, and then you have to again retreat because the king is simply too naked, and you have to have some kind of a defensive piece in front of the king. So after move queen to d5, we have rook to c8, king to g7, king to g2, queen to e4. Now Magnus is trying also to create a very annoying check here. A rook from f to c2, queen to g4, king to f2, and now after bishop to f4, Magnus includes further pieces into the attack. Again, we have rook to c3, queen to g3, king to f1, and after bishop to e5, in this position, young Krzysztof Duda resigns. So you could maybe try knight to e5, but now after queen to e5, again, I'm pointing out this is again a position where we have a passer. You cannot create always perpetuals. Again, the king is naked, so young Krzysztof Duda resigned, which is, I think, a decent decision. Magnus Carlsen pull off here really an immortal game. So as I said, Magnus Carlsen needs now only one more win, and he's then the winner of the Charity Cup in 2022. I think it's possible, of course, when we watch especially how Magnus is playing this tournament. Really beautiful tactical shots. So he played really impossible moves here. So really I was very happy when I saw this game, especially because we have seen now the monstrous tactical Magnus Carlsen. Really brilliant game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game like I did. If you want to see also some other commented chess games, here on my YouTube chess channel, here's the series of some other tournaments that we have covered before. And if you want to see maybe the best chess games of the past, check out my best chess games of all time series with some mortal games played by I don't know, Garry Kasparov, Magnus Carlsen, Anatoly Karpov, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.